Are you an established small business owner or aspiring entrepreneur? Would you like professional advice to help your business grow and succeed? Well, look no further. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is the territory's #1 resource to move your business forward. Enjoy no-cost advising, low-cost training, and technical assistance from experts in both the public and private sectors. The VISBDC is nationally accredited and sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Visit us at our locations on St. Thomas, St. John, or St. Croix, and follow us on social media at VISBDC. For easy access to all our training and networking events, be sure to join our newsletter and download the VISBDC app. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, here to help your business start, grow, and succeed.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VISBDC's hosting of the Cybersecurity Awareness Series. Today's webinar is entitled Secure Passwords. Today, UVI Information Services and Institutional Assessment staff Eric Patterson will prepare USVI small businesses with the tools necessary to secure their data and electronic information. Eric will focus on common fallacies for small businesses regarding cybersecurity, the types of threats encountered, strategies for combating the threats, and how to get started. Eric Patterson is the Director of Network Operations at the University of the Virgin Islands. For 36 years, he has been working with computers of all kinds, wired and wireless networks, cloud systems, and audio-visual systems integration. Here's a friendly reminder to put your questions in the chat, and they will be addressed by Eric either in the chat or later during the question and answer segment. A copy of this presentation is available upon email request to training@visbdc.org. We encourage you to take a few minutes after this training to fill out the survey that lets us know how we're doing. So without further ado, Eric, the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And I'm so happy to be here with you and presenting this session on secure passwords. This is a very, very important topic, and especially at UVI, we've addressed this multiple times. Recently, in October, which is Cybersecurity Month, we did a series of classes to try to educate people about cybersecurity at different aspects, and this is the first of the couple of training classes that we'll be offering through SBDC, including the secure passwords, phishing, ransomware, and other important topics like that. So please attend those if you'd like to learn more about those. So yeah, thank you so much to SBDC for having me present this, and we'll get right into it. Now, as Sharika had mentioned, I'm going to be presenting a couple of other websites and some other fun activities. So I'm going to probably do this in a sort of informal way, so that if there is a question, please do ask that in the chat and let us know. And I will pause occasionally to see if there are any questions, because there will be some interesting activities that you could participate in while we're doing the training. So I'm sure that everyone in attendance this morning is very aware that the passwords and your passwords for all of the services that you use, whether they be mission critical parts of your business or maybe social networking to draw attention to things that you use, it is super critical that you have good passwords. We want to prevent people from getting into any of these systems and services. And we want to do it in a way that is going to be effective and efficient, and is not going to cause you a great deal of trouble while accomplishing what you want to accomplish. So in order to do that, there are some really important concepts that we're going to go over. And I'll refer to some other things throughout the training that are going to be helpful to you. And you could save some of those websites and those documents that you can use in the future going forward. So please do that and refer back to them as I present them and whenever you need. So the first thing is that the password is like a gatekeeper to so much important information that you will need to protect. These days, with so many things being online, on the internet, or even on your intranet, things are password protected to keep them safe from hackers, from criminals, from people who are just attempting to entertain themselves by doing wrong. There are so many different kinds of situations, but our passwords are really keys. Okay, they're the gatekeeper to all of these services. So generating, using, and storing a good password is extremely important. So one of the first things that I want to bring to your attention is sort of the things that we would do at UVI, a big institution that has to adhere to security standards. And two of the very important security standards that we adhere to and observe at UVI are PCI compliance and NIST compliance. Both of those are very specific standards that we have to basically check all the boxes to make sure that we are doing these things. And one of those is to use secure passwords. So what is a secure password exactly? Well, recommendations include the length of the characters that you use in your passwords. And at UVI, for example, we use a minimum of 9 characters in the password. And that is a PCI compliance standard. Although many people now recommend using password lengths of 11 or 12 characters or more. And we're going to see why later on that is so important, because we're going to test that. So using a password that is a minimum of 9, but preferably 11 or 12 or more characters is going to be a very important thing for you to do. Also, you want to do things with your password that make them unhackable in other ways. So one of the things that you want to do is include multiple kinds of characters. You have an uppercase character, lowercase characters, combination of that. You want to include numbers, and you want to include special characters. So those special characters are, of course, things like punctuation marks and that sort of thing. So we forced people to use those kinds of characters in their passwords. Not everybody has the ability to force users to use those passwords. And maybe the site that you're using or the service that you're using doesn't require that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that yourself. Okay, so even if you're not forced to adhere to that, you should remember that you want to create passwords that use those key aspects. So uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, punctuation marks are non-alphanumeric characters. In your password, you absolutely do not want to include things like your name, your username, or other things that maybe people can figure out about you. Your birthday is not a good thing to use in your password. Your license plate number, the birthday of your children, all of those things that people can discover by maybe searching online are bad things to use in your password. You don't want to do that. Good habits that you can use for creating passwords are to use things like sentences or phrases. Okay, so you can create a password that's something like sounds like the first house on the street, but in the password you have numbers, punctuation marks, and other things like that to replace your other characters in the phrase. But it's something that's also memorable, so you're not going to forget that very easily. We're going to get into how you avoid forgetting passwords a little later because we know that you may have so many different accounts, so many passwords. It's hard to keep track of all this, especially when you make your passwords more complex. So one of the other things that you should probably observe is that don't use full words, okay? Because people, hackers, criminals can use a dictionary attack to actually try to figure out your password. They run a piece of software on their computer that can try to log into your account, and they compare, the entire dictionary against what your password might be. So a simple word that can be found in the dictionary, again, not something that you should be using for your password. Okay, you want to mix it up a little bit. You also don't want to reuse passwords. Okay, I realize that with so many accounts and so many passwords out there that you may need to be using, that you may be tempted to use the same kind of password. It may be similar, it may be identical in more than one system, and that is a very bad idea. Because if somebody is able to figure out your password in one place, that means that they could use that same password in multiple places. And that's not something we want to allow. You might try to use something for your password that it is something that only you would know. Like maybe it's something that is a little bit more personal or an experience of yours, or maybe something to do with something that you enjoy, or use that to generate the password. But you want to, again, use those characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and punctuation marks, are non-alphanumeric characters. Okay, so I am going to put, let me see if I can do this in the chat, another important rule when you use your different characters. Let's see. Bringing up the chat here. There we go. All right. Can everybody see that in the chat? All right. So that is a list of characters that are recommended for use for generating passwords. Now, it doesn't include all characters because there are some non-alphanumeric characters like the punctuation marks that are going to be, you don't want to use them because they can actually create a problem in systems. For example, if you use an exclamation point on some systems, that can actually cause the system to crash, okay? Because those characters actually can be used in code that's used on the website or on the service that you're using. So this is a set of characters that is strongly recommended by security professionals. And you can choose to create your password out of this list of characters because for the most part, they are characters that are safe. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do, and this is a little fun exercise, and I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Right. And we're going to share the URL as well. Can everybody see that? All right. So this first website, okay, in the chat. Good. Thank you, Genevieve. All right. So this first website, I'll put the URL in the chat as well. Okay. And this is a fun thing for you to do right now while we're doing this. Okay. And did we get that or no? No, we didn't. Okay, hold on. I've got that right here. There we go. All right. How secure is your password? Well, this is a very important thing because with this, you can put in a password that you might think that you would want to use, and you can test it Okay, so I'm going to try out this password that I have as a test. Okay, and I'll put it in here. Okay, and no, you can't see it. Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat anyway, just so that you can see. But you can see how long it's going to take your typical hacker to crack that password, 93 trillion years, and nobody's got that kind of time. So using a good strong password, okay, and in the chat, that's the password that I used. Okay, it's not super complicated, but it's just got the right length of characters. It's got everything sort of combined. You've got letters, uppercase, lowercase letters, you've got numbers, and you've got non-alphanumeric characters. So this is why the more complex the password is, the more difficult it is to hack. I'm sure you all realize that by now. But you can use a website like this. This is a very good one to go ahead and check your own passwords. Now, the first thing you're going to ask is, okay, well, I put my password in here and then they're going to record it and somebody's going to use it. But anyway, they do not do that on this website. But what I would suggest that you do is you can use it to test your method for creating secure passwords. Okay. Here's another site, not that one, to test the same password, and that is www.passwordmonster.com. We could put the same password in here, and you could say, oh, and this one, actually, it's only going to take 2 years to hack that. Okay. So when they give you this estimate of how long it's going to take to crack a password, they're referring to softwares that hackers will use or criminals will use that pretty much are available on the internet. Anybody can download it and use this software to attempt to hack a password. So you want to make sure that you test these things out first before you start using them. So any questions on this site or anything so far? Because this is sort of educational. You may find that you put your password in that you've been using and find that it's not very strong. But let me know if you have any concerns about that so far. All right. Great. So one of the next things that you want to do is, now that you've generated a secure password, okay, and you've got something that you like, maybe a system that you like, and because remember, you're not going to reuse the same passwords, okay? So I might have used that password, the 6 monkeys are looking, which was my example. And I don't want to use that every time. You know, I don't want to have my next password be 7 monkeys are looking. You want to create something different. So next, we're going to get into how you're able to handle all of this, because that's a lot of passwords. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have so many accounts and so many systems that I have to have passwords for that it's going to be very difficult for me to keep track of all of these passwords, let alone memorize them. So there are some things that we're going to do to help with that. So the one thing you want to remember is, of course, do not ever share your password with anyone, okay? Not even a friend or a family member, okay? Because you don't know if they're going to be as careful with it as you are, okay? And remember, it can lead to some pretty bad things like identity theft, or even really, you know, if it escapes their good keeping and somebody does hack them, then that password can get stored out on the internet, where hackers and criminals can actually buy a list of credentials and use them, you know, for their activities. So you don't want to share that password. One of the things that we also do is reset the password um, automatically every 120 days. Now, not everybody does that, nor do they have the capability of forcing their users or their accounts to do that. If you can, it's highly recommended that you reset that password, force a reset every 3 months or so. That is a suggested thing to do from NIST and PCI. And that means that your password is going to be new all the time. But it's up to you to make sure to use new, good passwords each time, different passwords. So don't share that password. Also, never send your password by email, instant message, or any other means of communication that is not really secure. If you send it in an SMS message, cell phone text message, or an email, those things are not secured. People can intercept that information and they can read those things, and you may have your password stolen that way. Also, if it's something that you put into a website, let's say you share a website login with other people, and everybody has that, your browser can contain that stuff for a little while. So we do reset the passwords every 120 days. Don't put that password in anything that you think would not be secure. Now, because each system out there is going to require a password. Let's say you have an email account that needs you to log in. Maybe you have other business accounts, or maybe suppliers, or like an Amazon or a bank. Everybody's got different logins. So by using a different password for each system, okay, we're going to make sure that if one password is stolen, it is not able to be used on all these other systems. That list of credentials that's out on the internet, which we're going to look at in a little while, that's available for people to buy online or even download for free. They can be using this on different systems that maybe you don't even subscribe to. So they're going to be trying to hack into something. Let's say you don't do business with Chase Bank, but suddenly you get an email from Chase Bank saying somebody's trying to log into your account. That could potentially be an indication that maybe your credentials are out there and somebody's trying to use them to either create a new account someplace using your identity, or hack into something using your username and password that you don't have an account for. So if they do that, it's called a credential stuffing attack, and it is one of the most common ways that criminals will try to either create fake accounts or get into legitimate users' accounts. Now, you might potentially figure out that you have dozens or hundreds of accounts out there that require you to use a password. And it's going to be very difficult for you to remember all of these usernames and passwords. So one of the things that you can do safely is to use a password, password management tool. Okay, a password management tool. Hang on one second. Get rid of this little window here. There we go. Password management tool include things like LastPass or Dashlane, something like that. And this is the kind of thing. It's a lot of people don't necessarily trust them 100%. But if you do some of the other things that I've been explaining, like change your password regularly and use the tools to accomplish this, then you will remain secure. What you don't want to do is use a password management tool like LastPass or Dashlane or many of the others and not change your passwords. Because if you use the same passwords everywhere and you don't change them regularly, and that system gets hacked or compromised in some way, then you will be susceptible to some kind of identity theft or somebody stealing your credentials. So you want to combine all of these things together. Another thing is that many of the browsers these days do use, let's see here, we've got on my screen, I'm going to share again. Here's an example of how Microsoft Edge web browser, there you go. Microsoft Edge web browser now comes with built-in password management, and Google Chrome does the same thing. So you can use these features, okay, just like you use a password management tool, and you can store those passwords in your web browser. But it is important that you adhere to those same principles, changing your password regularly and using different passwords for different sites. With so many different sites, it's great that we can now remember these passwords using the password management tools like what you see here in Microsoft Edge, where you can use that built into Microsoft Edge browser or Google Chrome browser or LastPass or Dashlane, so we can store those passwords fairly securely. But now, how do we create a different password for each of these sites? Well, you can use a password generator. Many of these tools, like LastPass or Dashlane, will generate passwords for you, generate complex passwords. And you could say, well, I want a password that is 12 characters or 13 characters or something like that. And I want a different password for every site. But when you generate those, it's just going to be a bunch of letters and numbers and punctuation and everything like that. There's no way you're going to be able to remember it. So one thing that you can do is you can use that code that you've generated using the password manager, plus a phrase that you know you'll be able to remember to create an even stronger password. But again, remember, you're going to have to remember all these passwords someplace or keep them safe. Okay. So now that you can see that there are these tools where you can store your passwords safely, you want to be sure that if something happens to that tool, that you have those passwords also backed up someplace else. Because if that tool should disappear or experience any problems, you're not going to be able to go back in there and retrieve your passwords. So what I recommend is, even if you do use a password management tool, like we're talking about here, you want to keep those passwords in a secure file someplace, maybe in a zip file. It could be just a plain old text file that you zip or protect with a password, and keep those offline someplace, maybe on a flash drive. And that way you can make sure that if something happens to that password management system, you can always go back and get your passwords. And you'll have to keep that updated. Every time you change a password, you'll have to update that file as well. This is just the price we pay for keeping everything secure. Okay, it's also okay if you want to write down your passwords, but you have to remember, if you write down your passwords, like you have 100 post-it notes or something like that, all of that has to be secured in the same way. So maybe you have a lockbox somewhere, or in a desk drawer that you can lock up, or you can hide this document someplace where people aren't going to find it. That's okay. You just have to remember you have to secure that as well. And I know that some people have to do that. And it's just how they work, and it's what they know. But please don't write it down on a piece of paper or in a notebook that's going to be right on your desk. And people are going to be able to open that and read that, because that would be a bad idea. Okay, Um, Anytime you suspect that your account may be compromised, you want to change your password. So let's go through some of those ideas. How would you know? Well, one of the simplest ways is, let's say you get an email from someone, um, and you get an email from a company or business that you work with, and it says, "Oh, well, you've just tried to log in and you've done X, Y, Z, and your password needs to be reset. Go ahead and reset your password." That's a good indication that if you didn't do that, that maybe there's somebody trying to get into your account, and you would want to check that out right away. Now, this is a very important thing to remember, is that if you do get an email that says that, it's not always true. It could be a phishing email, and that is something we're going to do another class on in the near future here. But it could be some sort of a false email trying to get you to submit your password into a link or something that may be provided in that email, in the hopes that you're going to provide that password and your credentials to somebody who's not authorized. And people are very good at faking these things. Okay. So let's say you get an email from your bank or something like that, and it looks just like, their logo and everything, and it's formatted just like you recognize that bank. And it looks like their website. It doesn't matter. It could be a fake. And if they give you a link to click and to go log in from that link, a very important advice for you is, I'd suggest that you don't click that link. If there's any suspicion at all. Instead, what you do is, let's say that you think the email is from Chase Bank or from Amazon or any other business like that. Go directly to the company's or services website. So you go and search for Chase Bank online on the website, and you log in as you normally would into the site. Okay. The way that you've practiced, the way that you're used to. And you don't use the links in that email. You don't use any of that that's been provided that could be fake. You go directly to the source, log in, and see if you have any messages or any issues with that service, because they're going to tell you right away. Or if there's a problem logging in that same way that you're used to logging into that system, then you'll know it right away. And you can either deal with their customer service, or you could reset your password on that site that you know is the real site, the main site for that service. So don't click the links. Instead, go separately to that site and do that. Okay. And then reset the password, because that is the point here, is that we want to change those passwords immediately on any account that you think is compromised. Okay. We're going to do another website here in a few minutes that's going to show you just how compromised some of these accounts may be. But something else that you want to also do, and this is a very common problem, and one of the ways that passwords get compromised very often, is that Wi-Fi is not as secure as most people think it is. Especially if you're in a public place or using a borrowed computer or device. Okay. A lot of people will log into the Wi-Fi, they'll put their information in there, and there are apps out there, there are programs that hackers and criminals will use to easily find a password that you've used to log into Wi-Fi. So be extra careful with Wi-Fi, and logging in, make sure that that network is forgotten when you're done. Okay. Because if you leave that logged in and you set it to remember your password, especially in a public place, or especially on a borrowed computer or device, you've got to forget the credentials, because otherwise somebody else is going to come in, And they may be able to change that password and do something like that to, compromise your account or steal your account. So there are tools that we can use that actually go on a Wi-Fi network, see who's logged into the Wi-Fi network, and attempt to steal their passwords for any user that's logged into that Wi-Fi. So certain kinds of Wi-Fi, like enterprise Wi-Fi, are more secure and more encrypted, but in general, public Wi-Fi that you may find is not very secure. Another thing to do is to use services that provide multi-factor authentication. You want to be able to turn that on. Okay, MFA or multi-factor authentication is where you can go ahead and log in, maybe put your password in, and then it will prompt you maybe an email or a text message or something like that. It will question you on that other system to see if it is indeed you that's trying to log in. Well, these days, it is a requirement for NIST and PCI compliance, security compliances, that we use multi-factor authentication and basically compare these attributes for you from one thing to another. So maybe it will use your phone number or your personal email address or any of these other things, or even an authenticator app on your phone, which is very common now. And you can basically authorize that using the two things, a password and that other method, some other method to confirm that you are you. So it is advisable that you turn those features on if those are available to you, okay? Because this is what a lot of companies are going to now. And even using a system like that, it is still hackable, but it is far less hackable or easy to compromise. Another thing that you can do is, if you have a hard time remembering your passwords, use password hints. Okay, so if you take a note or something like that, or if you keep a file with a list of your passwords, you don't have to write the password down, but write a hint to what it actually is to jog your memory. So, the one that I gave earlier about the 6 monkeys looking, I could come up with some kind of suggestion about which that one is, but I don't have to write the password down. It's something that will help me to remember. You can do that. As I was referring to earlier about the phishing emails, there are many, many ways that hackers and criminals can try to get your password from you. And one of the most common that we have seen in recent years is, and this is a social engineering tactic, is you may get a call from a company, okay? I referred to the emails earlier, it's similar, but they may be even far more aggressive. You may get a call from somebody, and it might be, say, a call from Microsoft. Okay, and they say, oh, well, we're calling from Microsoft and we see that there's a problem with your computer, or there's something wrong with your account, and we think your account has been compromised, and we're going to help you to figure this out, but you've got to fix it now, otherwise your computer is going to be locked down. And there are a lot of people who don't understand these processes, who really are victims of things like this. It's important to be mindful and share these warnings with anyone that you deal with. That don't believe, when you experience this, don't believe just anybody that may call you or email you or text you. You need to be sure you know who you're talking to. They are very convincing, and they will say, oh, we're going to fix your computer, but we need your password. So the first thing that you should be asking is, why do they need my password? Okay, because if you really are who you say you are, you should have access to it. I shouldn't have to give you my password. So these are tricks that people use, and it's pretty sad the kind of situations that people fall into. And this is very, very common. So please be aware of that. And you should treat people who you don't know as strangers, and you're not going to give them any personal private information, certainly not your passwords, not even your usernames, and no personal information about yourself, because there should really be no reason for that. Okay. And that, by the way, that includes social security numbers, because we've actually run into that before as well. I mean, this is another bit of private information that is extremely sensitive, and will lead to identity theft. Okay, when you're accessing services, okay, one of the things that you want to do if you're putting in your password on a website or something like that is make sure that it is secured. Okay, because websites that are not secured can be vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks or other kinds of credential hacking attacks. And a good way to see if the website that you're working with is secured is very simple. And I'm still sharing my screen here to protect your online accounts. If you look at the address bar here in the top, if you can see my mouse, you'll see that there's a little lock, and it says HTTPS. Okay. So HTTPS, the S in that, indicates that it is a secured website, and the lock indicates that it is secure. And you can actually click on the lock in most browsers here, and you can get a bunch of information about it. You say connection is secure, and you click on that. It's telling you that it has a valid certificate by a trusted authority. This is very important. And this is also something that you want to do if you have a business that is online, or you work online a lot, is that if you have systems that are online, make sure that you use certificates to secure your site, especially if it has any kind of sensitive information on it, or an e-commerce site or something like that. It absolutely does have to have an SSL certificate to secure the site. If it does not, there is no way that you should be putting your password in on that site in good conscience, because that is very vulnerable and you don't want to do that. So you could check this if you use a website, you're putting your account information in, make sure that it is HTTPS at least. Okay. All right. Here is, let's see if I can, one second. I get that little menu bar always in the way. All right, here we go. Oh boy. One second. All right, back to sharing. All right, so this site here, I'm going to put this in the chat. This is excellent because it's sort of like a quick reference cheat sheet from the federal government's CISA organization, okay, that gives you some tips to use for securing your passwords. So I recommend that you keep a hold of that and maybe even distribute it. I'll put this in the chat. There you go. All right. And it's got some really good tips in there. You can see some of the things that I referred to earlier. Using random passwords, character length. Each site should have a unique password, and use a password manager to remember all of those passwords. So, and this is good. And you can find out a whole lot more information from CISA about cybersecurity and the things that we talked about here today and a lot more. All right. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is fun, and I'm going to put the link for this in the chat as well. Here we go. And please feel free to visit that right now as we're doing this. Now, you can put in your account, and of course, keep this private, keep it to yourself, okay, into this website. What it's doing is exactly what it says. It is searching a list or a database of all compromised credentials. Not quite all, I would say most of them. Okay, I'm sure there's plenty out there that they haven't caught yet. But let's say I put in a an account or something like this. It could be a username. It could be, woo, yeah. So it's referring to uvi.edu. So look at all those people I have to pay attention to now. You can see that these are some accounts that have been compromised. Okay. So you can even see the passwords that were used. This is public. All right. This is public information and it's available to anybody who wants to search. So this is what happens when some of these accounts get compromised. They go into a big database. So basically it means, and I have done this already, that we need to go through these accounts and make sure that the passwords have been changed, okay, that they're not this. Now, I can't see people's passwords, and most network administrators cannot. But what we can do is we can change the passwords right away, change them to something that we know is secure and good and has not been compromised. That's all you need to do, because then, you know, this negates the work that these folks have put into hacking all of these accounts. So definitely, if you use this tool, you find that there's an account that you're using that has been compromised. What you don't want to see is your real password being listed here as well. If your real password is there, you need to change that account password right away. You know, if not sooner. Um, if you see that the password is old or is not correct, you could be safe. But more than likely, what's ended up happening is if those accounts are in this system, it could be that there's somebody who's actually paying attention to the security of those accounts, meaning that is on their list of accounts that they want to hack. So you have to be very careful. You have to alert those account holders or users to the fact that they need to make sure to change their password regularly and use secure passwords. If this is not you, you already know, based on what we've discussed here today, how important it is to keep those passwords changed and unique. Okay. If you're using a password here and you're using it on multiple sites, you know you need to use those unique passwords on the different sites. Okay, excellent. All right. And use the password security checker to see how secure those passwords are. I could check some of these. I'm going to tell you if I use some of these as an example and go to find out how secure my password is. I'm going to find that, uh-oh, it's going to take about a minute to hack that password. So that's not good. So use those complex passwords. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of passwords is if you have any sort of server system or even an e-commerce system or something like that that is very sensitive, maybe you keep user information, maybe personal information for others, it is extremely important that you adhere to these security standards like from NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, or PCI, and that you're compliant with what they require You might even want to try to do a NIST assessment or something like that on your network or on your systems to make sure that you're doing everything you can to be safe. Okay. By the way, CISA.gov has many helpful resources there to help you learn more about cybersecurity and even provide assistance if you ask to have them scan your systems and maybe give you some feedback. I was surprised to learn that a few years ago, and they do interact with you. They also do take reports of any suspected cybersecurity criminal activity. And that is one thing that we certainly do at UVI, is we report those things not only to the FBI, but to CISA so that they can use that information in the future to prevent any kind of hacks. So in regard to your secure systems or sensitive systems, you want to make sure that you do not use user-generated passwords on those. This is specific to servers and maybe e-commerce systems, databases, or anything like that where you might contain sensitive information for your customers, for your users. That user-generated password is something that might be a plain text password that you've seen me refer to. Instead, you're supposed to be using a password hash, or it's been hashed, which means that you can take a password, you can generate it. It can be a whole bunch of gobbledygook, which is just letters and numbers and characters and everything like that. It is really not readable, okay? It's not even something that you have nicely replaced characters with and is still a phrase. It is all just code. So why you do that is because basically it's not something that a human is going to be able to hack, okay? And it's also important that you use much longer passwords for systems like those, maybe 32 characters or more. And those passwords are going to be much more sensitive. So you're going to have to keep them someplace extremely safe. All right. Well, it's 11:52 by my clock. I'd like to take a little bit of time. If anybody has any questions or comments or concerns, please either speak up or put them in the chat, and I would be happy to talk about that.
I have a question.
Sure.
If I wanted to keep my passwords in a Word document or Excel spreadsheet
Mhm.
on my desktop, is there a way to create a password
Yes.
to? Okay, how
Yes.
would you doing that?
So what I do is I use a zip tool, ZIP, right? And I put that file in a zip archive, a good free tool to use for zipping files, which compresses the file, is 7-zip. Okay, let me see if I could find the website here for you. And it's a free download. There you go, 7-zip. And you can download that for free. It's a good piece of software. I use it regularly, as do millions of people. And what that will do is it will, when you run that, you can add those files with the passwords and usernames to a zip archive. Now, you can also password protect that zip archive. So that's actually 2 levels of security, because zip files are very difficult for things like viruses and malware to get into to read the contents of the file. So you're protecting that file against other malware, but also you can password protect it. And you could experiment with this and see, how easy it is for you to use. I know that it's pretty easy. All it is that you have a file on your desktop, or on your computer someplace, or on your flash drive. It's a zip file. It can contain multiple files. And you can open the Word or Excel file directly from inside of it, and it will prompt you for a password if you set it up. So that's my recommendation, if you want to keep files with passwords in them.
I had heard you mention something about a zip file before, but I wasn't exactly sure how to use it. I mean, I've used zip files before to compress a bunch of different files
Yes,
on the computer, but
it will. And it's a good thing to have also, because one of the things that you can do is if you send files in email as email attachments, it's a really good idea to zip those files and send the zip file instead of the unzipped file in an email attachment. Because what that does is that actually helps to keep those files secure in transit over email.
good to know. I also heard another question.
Sure.
And this doesn't just go for business, but personal accounts as well.
Mhm.
Is there any way to delete old accounts that you don't use anymore, so you no longer have a password associated with that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because that is our identity that has sort of gotten stuck out there over the years, and maybe there's things we don't use anymore. What I would suggest is this database that I showed you here earlier. This search here is very good. It's not going to show you what site that was, but there may be others that you will find similar to this, because what you want to see is who has that. Now, so that you could do something about it is what you're asking. But I think that right now there are no good free tools to identify exactly what that is, but there are some, uh, how to say this, there are some identity security systems out there that you can pay for that are actually very good. And what they do is they search the internet for your identity and tell you where they find that. Um, but I think because that's such a valuable tool, I think they're all paid services at this point. But you will be able to find those. Yeah. And certainly for business, I recommend that, because I know that those accounts can be sitting out there. You might not know where they are, but there's no easy way to identify that. No.
Very good. And I think I already know the answer to this question, but some sites will have you use like your Gmail account associated with the website's account that you're going to use. I guess you recommend to stay away from that and just create one.
Yeah, that falls into that category where you're using the same password from multiple systems, you see. So that means if your Gmail account password were to be compromised, then those other things would also then be compromised. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
I have a question, Eric.
Sure.
Those two websites for checking passwords, there seems to be a big discrepancy between how fast one of them says the password can be cracked and how fast the other one says it can be cracked.
Yeah, yeah. And that is because they're using different tools to analyze that. And by tool, I mean they are using information from a password hacking tool, using its algorithm to calculate that against your password. So maybe that the one of them is using a different set of tools than the other. If it was me, I would go with the one that has the shortest amount of hack time, and not believe the other. But I would stick with that one. Look at the one that has the shortest, and try to make sure that you adapt your password to, so that it is at least a week before they can hack your password.
Yeah, because one said 7 months and the other one said like a trillion years. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah. I would go with the 7 months, which is still a very long time.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an acceptable amount of time for a password?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And here's why, is because there's two ways that hackers can do that. The first one, which is the most difficult, is that it's actually somebody sitting on their computer using a piece of software and paying attention to what they're doing and running these password tools on your account for a specific site or system. Okay. They're not going to have patience to do that for more than a day or two before it's no longer worth it. Okay. Now, the other thing is that there are actually systems that you can rent and pay for or lease that are automated, and it's a computer system, and we can include things like AI in this that will try to hack accounts, and they can sit there running 24/7 as long as you choose to try to hack that password. Now, more than likely, they're not going to spend more than a couple of days' time to do this either, because that's going to be very costly for them. It's going to be very machine intensive, meaning they have to have a computer and a software doing this alone to hack your account. Most likely, if it's more than a week, they're just not going to put in the time to do that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's important for everybody to remember that, like on the dark web, there are so many things that you can find for criminal activity. There's all kinds of things out there. And it's scary to know that these tools are pretty much available to anybody. And they're quite powerful. And like I said, with AI, they're getting more powerful. The phishing emails, you can imagine now we have AI to help to generate these fake emails. So it's scary. We have to be very aware, try to stick to these things, remember that. And, you know, complex passwords, changing them often, keeping them secured, stored securely, all are very important. I personally, with all of the accounts that I have, I do use a password manager. My password manager will tell me if there's any suspected breaches, just like some of the sites we looked at. And I will be prompted to change the passwords regularly and not use the same password on multiple sites. So, and many of the password managers will do all of those things now. And they do automatically generate random passwords that are nothing but code. And I have started going in that direction just to make sure that I keep everything secure.
Does the password manager prompt you to change your password to the password manager periodically?
You mean to adapt a generated password? It
Well,
doesn't know of anything I didn't put in there.
okay.
Yeah, it's
So
not aware of any account or system that I haven't given it.
okay. So do
Yeah.
you change your password to your password manager periodically?
Oh, yeah, you mean the master password? Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Yes. That's of course key to the whole operation, right? Yeah. No, that is the strongest password. And that is actually, I use that with an authenticator, which means that there's no way that I could log into that with just a password. You see, if I want to
Okay.
log into that, it's going to send to my phone or to my device, another device, a prompt to allow me to log into it. So if that's not me, it's not getting allowed. See, so it's an extra level of security. That's the multi-factor authentication I was referring to.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Genevieve? All right. Well, thank you all. I would certainly refer back to Sharika and the SBDC. I think we have some other slides we are looking at here. And here we go, some contact information for SBDC. And I appreciate everybody for attending today. And if you do have any questions, I'm always happy to answer questions. I think that you can contact SBDC if you would like, and they can refer to me, or you can contact me as well. I'll put my email address in the chat before we go. And let me see, there's something else in the chat.
Alrighty. Thank you, Eric. So
Yeah,
the
sure.
VI SBDC has so much more in store for the USVI small business community. You can visit our website at www.vispdc.org. Download the VI SBDC app on your mobile device from the appropriate app store. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google Business, and subscribe to the VI SBDC YouTube channel for new uploads of our on-demand webinars. Here's a preview of our webinars that are coming up. Outside of webinars, we actually have an event this evening. It's going to be held at the UVI 13D Innovation Center. It's the Agriculture Business Center St. Thomas opening. So that's going to be today from 5:30 to 7:30. On January 23rd, we have VBAC, and they're conducting a webinar entitled Introduction to Business Ownership. On January 25th, we have UVI ITS back again with cybersecurity awareness, and the topic at hand would be ransomware and cyber threats. On January 29th, we have the Lieutenant Governor's Office presenting and registering and maintaining your business name electronically. And on February 1st, we have ITS back again for their final presentation within this series, and it's entitled Phishing and Email Threat Awareness. I see that all of the questions have been answered. Eric, thank you so much for your willingness to do this and provide this information to our USVI small business community. Everyone, thank you for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day on behalf of the entire VI SBDC network.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.